Hi, my name's Marin. I came home for Christmas, thinking maybe this year would feel different. But when I walked in, my seat at the table was gone. My sister smiled and said, "It's just immediate family." My brother looked away. My parents said nothing. That's when I realized this wasn't about a chair. It was about erasing me. But they forgot one thing. I still had the truth and the proof they prayed I'd never find. The snow had settled in quiet layers over the familiar streets, softening the edges of cracked sidewalks and fading fences. I drove slowly, my rental car humming low against the hush of December. Cincinnati hadn't changed much, still sleepy and gray this time of year, but I had. That became clear with every block I passed. The closer I got to the old house, the more my stomach tightened. I remembered how we used to hang strings of lights along the gutters, my hands freezing but proud. I was the peacekeeper then. The one who made sure the ornaments were spaced evenly, who smoothed over bickering with jokes. But now, no one had offered to pick me up from the airport. My messages were read, not answered. I wasn't sure if I was truly expected or just assumed. I kept rehearsing what I'd say: keep things light, compliment the decorations, smile. Make it easy. Familiar. You never really come home the same person, but you always hope someone there stayed the same. I pulled into the driveway just after 3. The house was already packed, cars lining the curb, laughter floating out from the windows. But no one came to the door. I stood there a moment, breath puffing in the cold, then let myself in. The warmth hit me, but not from the people. A quick glance up, and heads turned. Not startled in a good way, more like I'd walked into the wrong meeting. My brother's wife narrowed her eyes. "Oh, we thought you weren't coming this year." I set my bag down, unzipped my coat. No one took it. The hooks by the door were full anyway. The fireplace crackled, and someone's kid had taken my old seat, my spot, where I used to read Christmas books to them. I scanned the mantel. Dozens of family photos, all polished, all perfect. None with me. In the dining room, the long oak table gleamed under candlelight. Plates were already set, 12 of them. I waited, thinking maybe someone had forgotten one. Then someone brought out a mismatched plate from the kitchen, still wet. "There," my cousin muttered, sliding it down the table. "It's just immediate family this year, you know what I mean." Yeah, I knew what she meant. I smiled back, small and stiff, while something shifted behind my ribs. The last time I sat here, I left after a screaming match. No apologies were ever made. I guess silence counts as resolution now. Dinner conversation spun around me like wind I couldn't catch. My niece asked, "Why didn't you ever get married?" Mom said you were always too busy. Someone asked about that thing I do with nonprofits, as if my 10 years of work had no actual name. My brother raised his glass, praising his wife for organizing everything. No mention of the pies I brought, even though they were Mom's old recipes, ones I memorized because no one else had cared to. The table was full, but I felt like a guest. Like I'd accidentally stepped into someone else's holiday. I tried to stay present, tried to respond with grace, but every word felt like I was defending a life I had chosen, just not the one they approved of. Sometimes, silence around a table is louder than any argument. Then came the toast. My father stood. "Here's to having everyone together. This family, solid and strong." Everyone clinked glasses. My name wasn't mentioned. Not a glance. I lifted mine anyway, the smile barely held together. I could feel it starting, the ache in my jaw from holding back. I remembered what Mom once whispered to me after another forgotten birthday: "They'll never see you unless you show up broken." I looked around the table, and I knew I wasn't there to be seen. I was there to fill a seat. The maple leaf napkin folds caught my eye. We used to make them together when I was 10, my mother and hers always looked better. Today, they were at every setting. Except mine. I stood up quietly and walked outside. The cold bit instantly, but it felt more honest than the warmth inside. I pulled out my phone and opened the email with my return flight. Thought about changing it, going back early. Then I heard someone call my name, soft, hesitant. I turned, and there was my cousin Ellie. We hadn't seen each other in 6 years. She hugged me tight, the kind that says I remember you before everything fell apart. "You being here," she whispered, "changes everything. They didn't expect you to come." I pulled back just enough to look at her. Something in her voice told me this wasn't just about dinner. I came home hoping to belong. But maybe I came to remember why I left. Later that evening, after most of the noise had settled and the air inside the house thickened with leftover smells of gravy and cinnamon, I slipped the small stack of gifts from my bag. One for each of them: my sister's favorite lotion she once mentioned in passing, a rare vinyl my brother used to love, a handmade scarf for Dad in the same color Mom used to wear. I even tied a card to each with a handwritten note. It wasn't flashy. It was meant to feel seen. I placed them under the tree quietly. No announcement. I figured someone would notice. Maybe when the coffee came out. Maybe later. But by the time dessert ended and laughter returned to the living room, I noticed 2 of the gifts had been nudged behind the tree. Another was gone altogether. My brother's wife walked by, glanced at the pile, and muttered, "Oh, we don't really do that kind of thing anymore." Then she kept walking. No one opened mine, not even out of politeness. I sat on the edge of the couch cushion, the only space left, pretending to be interested in a conversation I wasn't in. I looked around at everyone admiring each other's gifts. I clapped when others did. I smiled when someone squealed over a gift card. But something inside me went quiet. I started to wonder if I'd brought more than just packages. Maybe my presence itself felt out of place. Maybe I'd been trying too hard. I went upstairs to get my charger. My childhood room was down the hall, second door on the right. Except when I opened it, I didn't recognize it. Cardboard boxes lined the walls, plastic bins stacked near the closet. The posters I'd taped up as a teenager were gone. In their place were folded towels, old fans, out-of-season coats. My niece's suitcase was open on the floor. Her pillow on the bed. My things, what little was left, were shoved into a single plastic tub in the corner. I lifted the lid and found a cracked snow globe with a ballerina inside. Her leg was missing. When I asked about it later, my sister just shrugged. "Oh, that old thing? No idea. Probably got knocked over during the move." I was told I'd be sleeping downstairs. There was a thin air mattress already inflated next to the furnace. Someone had tossed a pile of winter coats on it like a makeshift blanket. No pillow. Nobody apologized. In fact, they acted like it had always been that way. They say home is where the heart is. But what if your heart's been evicted? Back upstairs, the conversation had moved on. My brother started telling a story about our family trip to the lake when we were kids. Everyone laughed at the part about the raccoon in the cooler. But he left me out completely. Not just my name, my part of the story. Another sibling chimed in, "Things have been so peaceful around here the past few Christmases." She looked directly at me but said nothing more. I tried to laugh along. I said, "I was there too, remember?" But no one responded. The conversation just moved on. My niece asked, "Did you really live here before?" Her tone wasn't mean, just curious. Like she was asking about a house she never believed someone else had once called theirs. My aunt gave a little chuckle. "You always had such a dramatic memory. People don't erase you loudly. They do it in whispers, or not at all." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I lay on the cold mattress staring at the ceiling. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just being sensitive. Maybe I was tired, or hormonal, or nostalgic in a way that made everything feel worse than it was. But then I opened my photos. Years of Christmases, me helping Dad hang the lights, me baking with Mom, me reading to the nieces. All of it real, tangible. I scrolled until I found a voice memo I'd saved from 3 years ago. Grandma's voice, shaky but strong. "Rowena, you're the glue in this family. Don't ever think they'd be okay without you." And yet tonight, no one had said my name. Maybe I wasn't supposed to be here. Maybe this visit was their soft way of closing a chapter I hadn't realized was ending. Still, I smiled through it all. Said goodnight like I meant it. Cleaned dishes that weren't mine. After midnight, I walked quietly back upstairs and stood outside my old room. I could hear my niece laughing inside with someone on FaceTime. I knocked gently. No answer. Laughter kept going. I turned back down the hallway. There, above the steps, was a framed photo I hadn't noticed before. A family photo, everyone dressed in red. Standing in front of this very house. It was from last Christmas. I wasn't in it. I closed the basement door behind me slowly, sat on the edge of the mattress, and whispered, "I'm not a guest. I'm the one they forgot to uninvite." I opened my suitcase, saw the card I'd made for Dad, something simple, just a note saying I missed him, and tore it in half. Quietly, my phone buzzed. It was a message. From Jake, my old neighbor from across the street. "Heard you were back in town," it read. "Your dad said you wouldn't stay long." I stared at the screen. Not because of what it said, but because he'd said it before I even arrived. I couldn't sleep last night. My mind replayed the empty chair at the table, the quiet corners I slipped into, the laughter that wasn't for me. Early this morning I slipped out of bed, tiptoed down the hall and into the kitchen. The house was still quiet. Frost streaked the windows. The coffee machine gurgled and filled the air with something familiar, an old comfort. I filled my mug and noticed my favorite ceramic cup, the one I gave Mom years ago, cracked and tossed into the trash bin. I stared, wondering how something so small could hurt so much. Upstairs, I heard routines already starting, the children preparing, the chatter of dresses and ties. My siblings were gathering for a family photo, without me. I walked into the living room, smiled, and said, "Good morning." Their faces turned politely. "Oh, we already did a few practice shots," someone said with a shrug. It's strange how a family can be so full of people and still feel empty. That phrase echoed in me as I left the room and walked toward the basement. In the basement I searched for the old blanket I'd promised to bring. The furnace rumbled. Boxes and bins filled the space like silent witnesses. I knocked over a shoebox accidentally, pictures, receipts, old holiday ornaments scattered across the concrete floor. My eyes caught an envelope sealed, addressed to me in Mom's handwriting, dated 2 weeks before she died. My hands shook. Someone had tucked it away under tax papers marked private. I hesitated, then opened it. The handwriting was hers. "You were always the one who listened. The house should have been yours to keep it alive." My breath caught. The will must have been changed afterward. I shut the envelope and placed it inside my coat. I tried to smile as I left the basement, but the word, betrayal, found a place in my chest. During breakfast I dropped the envelope into my coat pocket. I said, "I found something interesting downstairs." My brother's fork froze. My sister-in-law shifted on the bench. My father looked at me, face unreadable. "You shouldn't go through things that aren't yours," he told me quietly. The air grew colder though the furnace was on. I sat up a bit straighter. I knew guilt wasn't mine to carry. I sensed their silence, years of shared decisions now cracking open. I kept the letter hidden, held it close like a secret anchor. This wasn't merely being excluded, this was intentional. It mattered. Later I wandered into the study. The photo albums lay open on the coffee table. I turned pages once filled with familiar faces, childhood birthdays, Christmas mornings, me helping hang lights. Now half the pages were missing. Some were glued over, some corners torn. The article I'd been in as a child was framed, but my face had been cut out. Anger rose quietly and fully. I whispered to myself, they didn't forget me. They erased me on purpose. I felt something shift. I moved from confusion to a cold readiness. That night, after the children were asleep, I lay in the guest bed I'd been offered, the letter on the nightstand beside me. Through the thin walls I heard voices in the hall outside my door. They sounded calm but clandestine. One voice, "If she found it, we can't let her take it." Another, "Dad said to keep it quiet. We'll handle it tomorrow." My breath caught. I stared at the ceiling, the matte silver light of the night lamp dancing faintly. Clutching the letter, I thought, I finally understood what we were dealing with. Not neglect, not accident, control. I knew then that this wasn't just Christmas anymore, it was a reckoning. By the time night settled in and the board games were halfway through a round I hadn't been told about, I realized I wasn't part of the plan, I was just an extra. They'd set up the tradition without me, and I walked into it like a stranger at a front door. Odessa tossed an offhand comment about, "You always being late, right in front of everyone." I forced a laugh, but I added quietly, "Better late than never erased." The room stiffened. I watched their faces, some softened, some tightened. My brother Brent offered me a drink, his eyes flicking past me like I was a placeholder. Was it peace or distraction? I wasn't sure, but the water in my glass burned cold. I sat among them while the laughter, the jokes, the clinking of dice and cards proceeded. My mind spun the moment over. I was being tested. I felt the tension coil like a spring, and I knew the timing of my move had to be precise. Watching Brent near the kitchen later, I caught a moment when he thought I wouldn't notice. I asked him about the letter, our mother's letter, and saw the color drop from his face. He stuttered, trying to dismiss it. That letter wasn't meant for you. I stared at him calmly. Then why was it addressed to me and locked away? He backed away, mumbling, Dad said if you came back, we'd deal with it discreetly. The quiet panic in his voice told me everything. This wasn't a mistake or neglect. It was a cover-up. My posture changed. I stopped smiling. I stopped pretending the silence didn't cut. The patterns, once blurry, sharpened into betrayal. I realized I was no longer a guest waiting for welcome. I was a threat they needed to manage. Dessert arrived. They think it always resets the mood. But I stood up now. Quietly, I held up the photo I'd photographed earlier, the will's original draft from the study, hidden away. I said, before we cut cake, let's acknowledge who was written out of the story and why. Whispered gasps circled the room. Odessa tried to laugh it off. My father stood, his face ashen. Stop sabotaging Christmas, he said. I calmly answered, you already did. I'm just pointing out where the nails went. The illusion of harmony broke. I saw relatives glance at each other, uncomfortable. Someone reached for their drink, others moved away. I felt the air shift and for the first time, I was no longer waiting for an invitation, I was demanding recognition. After the guests left and the snow began to fall heavier outside, my father came to me on the porch, his breath clouding in the night. He said, if you go public with that letter, you'll destroy this family's name. I looked at him, nodded as though considering it. You already destroyed the family, I'm just removing the curtain. He offered an ultimatum. Walk away now and he'd forget it all. Push and he'd contest my mental health history. My breath caught. My cheeks stung with cold and pride both. I replied quietly, you taught me silence was loyalty. I've outgrown silence. For so long I'd feared his disapproval more than justice, but not anymore. I knew his control ended now. Later, I wrote the email. Scanned photos of the letter, the will draft, payment ledgers, all attached. Scheduled to send at 6 tomorrow morning. Christmas morning. I whispered under my breath as I clicked schedule. If they don't want me at the table, they'll have to deal with me standing on it. I walked inside, heart pounding, and the house no longer felt familiar. It felt like a stage. And tomorrow morning, everything changes. I sat in the dim study, the hush of late December bearing down on me. The document from the locked cabinet rested in my hand, thin and crisp and loaded with warning. My heart thudded, not panic, just steady, set. The words echoed in my mind. You were always the one who listened. I folded the paper and slid it into my pocket, standing slowly. I left the room, the soft click of the door behind me like a signal. In the living room, laughter and board games continued under polite lights. I paused at the threshold, allowed their comfort to fill the space before I disrupted it. If you never paid attention, I'll show up anyway, I reminded myself. No guilt, no compromise, not anymore. I entered carrying the sealed envelope. My voice rose just enough. Before we finish the game, there's something I need to say about ownership and respect. Silence dropped. Odessa stopped mid-move. Brent looked at his cards without looking. Father frowned, the crease between his eyebrows sharpened. I removed the letter and read, the house should have been yours to keep it alive. The words hung heavy in the air. Then I revealed the will draft, my name as key heir, hidden in plain sight. I gave the house its foundation. Now I claim its truth. The room shifted. Odessa smirked, someone rose, someone shuffled away. Their calm broken. Facts have weight. My voice held it. I didn't shout. I allowed their discomfort to echo. Father's voice was hard when he stepped forward. If you go public with this, you'll destroy our reputation. I answered softly. Reputation built on shadows is still a lie. His offer was blunt. Walk away and all this disappears, or push and he'll contest my mental health. I looked at my siblings, then back at him. I'm done hiding. I'll protect my worth, even if you can't recognize it. Odessa's lips twisted. Kelton's arms crossed. Beckett stood back, eyes flicking between us. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The email scheduled for 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. The truth would land. The room grew heavy under an unseen pressure. A quiet war raged in polished wood and fine china. Guests had left. The boards were stacked. Glasses still held champagne's bloom. I walked through the room, each step measured. At the study door, I opened it again, retrieved the file labeled Private, Family Legacy. I closed the door softly behind me. I sat at the desk. I inhaled deep. I remembered a mentor's voice. Don't wait for permission to claim your presence. I tapped a message to Beckett. If they taught you silence, I'll teach you presence. Calm. The storm had happened. Now came the rebuild. I wasn't just being excluded anymore. I was changing the rules. The clock read 11:57 p.m. Sleep felt distant. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. I pressed answer. I know what you're hiding, I said, my voice even in the cold dark. The line went silent. Outside, snow fell again, covering the footprints at the door. Tomorrow morning, when that email sent, everything would shift. I let the stillness hang a moment. Then I stood, walked to the window, watched the light fade. I wasn't waiting. I was standing. Christmas morning arrived with a stillness I couldn't ignore. I woke early, before the clatter of dishes or the shuffle of pajamas, and let the pale light of winter fill the room. I carried with me a small speaker I'd brought tucked into my bag, the same song we used to sing, the one Dad insisted we belt out each year. Quietly I left my room, crossed the landing, stepped into the living room where the tree lights still blinked, and set the speaker on the fireplace mantel. The melody began soft and gentle, and then the voices of my past filled the house. I waited, watching as the others stopped mid-laughter, mid-move, and turned toward me. They hadn't heard it for years, not with me. They sang this without me for years, I thought. Let them hear me now. I stood in the doorway, calm but charged, ready to take the stage. After the song ended, I walked into the home office, the door unlocked earlier from the study already. On the desk lay the file I had positioned just a day before. I reached for it and pulled out the ledger. Bank statements covering March through August, entries showing monthly transfers from me to the house, the repairs, the utilities. I read the numbers aloud. Since 2015 I've sent over $50,000 in support. The house, the repairs, the utilities, and yet look at the name on the deed. I held up the deed copy, Odessa Klein and Kelton Maris. The room froze. My father shut his mouth. My mother dropped the book she was reading. I let the silence do the work. When I said, I gave the house its foundation. Now I claim its truth, I watched as every face tilted, eyes flickered. Validation didn't feel like triumph, it felt necessary. The calm shattered, and the pace picked up. My nephew Beckett stood up, brows raised. Aunt Marin, I didn't know you paid that much, he said, quietly. Odessa hissed, Beckett, sit down, this is our family business. He didn't comply. Maybe your business forgot it included you, he answered. My brother's usual steady expression cracked. I opened the ledger further, pulled out a page showing the loan I covered 5 years ago when their venture tanked. This wasn't charity. It was expectation. And the name at the bottom was mine. I watched as children exchanged glances, adults stiffened, my voice soft but unwavering. Empowerment mixed with the sharp taste of betrayal. The room segmented, some faces turned away, others stuck in place. The turning tide had begun. I closed the file. I stepped toward the door. I didn't return for pity. I returned for truth, I said. My father's voice lowered, you're making a mistake. This family will remember this Christmas as the one you broke it. A faint smile curved my lips. Maybe. But I'll remember the one where I rebuilt me. I picked up the file and walked out the front door into the silent snow-kissed morning. I closed it behind me, not as retreat, but as declaration. I recalled the key in my glove box, the anniversary snowfall, the names omitted, the house that wasn't mine any longer. I accepted that this was the moment of change. Inside, the house still hummed with Christmas chatter. I watched from the entryway, my breath misting in the cold air, as they looked for a pause. I retrieved the blue velvet chair I'd brought with me, recognized it as mine now. I sat and let the quiet wash over me. I typed a short message to Beckett. If they taught you silence, I'll teach you presence. The momentum had shifted. I was no longer a part of their plan, I had become my own. The past didn't just haunt me, I repurposed it. The foundation I'd laid would support me now. Under the tree, I noticed a single wrapped box with my name, very deliberate. I hadn't moved it yet. The tag, from someone who still remembers. I paused, watching the morning light catch the edges of the ribbon. For the first time, I wondered who inside the family would open it instead of me. Christmas morning arrived with a stillness I couldn't ignore. I woke early, before the clatter of dishes or the shuffle of pajamas, and let the pale light of winter fill the room. I carried with me a small speaker I'd brought tucked into my bag, the same song we used to sing, the one Dad insisted we belt out each year. Quietly I left my room, crossed the landing, stepped into the living room where the tree lights still blinked, and set the speaker on the fireplace mantel. The melody began soft and gentle, and then the voices of my past filled the house. I waited, watching as the others stopped mid-laughter, mid-move, and turned toward me. They hadn't heard it for years, not with me. They sang this without me for years, I thought. Let them hear me now. I stood in the doorway, calm but charged, ready to take the stage. After the song ended, I walked into the home office, the door unlocked earlier from the study already. On the desk lay the file I had positioned just a day before. I reached for it and pulled out the ledger. Bank statements covering March through August, entries showing monthly transfers from me to the house, the repairs, the utilities. I read the numbers aloud. Since 2015 I've sent over $50,000 in support. The house, the repairs, the utilities, and yet look at the name on the deed. I held up the deed copy, Odessa Klein and Kelton Maris. The room froze. My father shut his mouth. My mother dropped the book she was reading. I let the silence do the work. When I said, I gave the house its foundation. Now I claim its truth, I watched as every face tilted, eyes flickered. Validation didn't feel like triumph, it felt necessary. The calm shattered, and the pace picked up. My nephew Beckett stood up, brows raised. Aunt Marin, I didn't know you paid that much, he said, quietly. Odessa hissed, Beckett, sit down, this is our family business. He didn't comply. Maybe your business forgot it included you, he answered. My brother's usual steady expression cracked. I opened the ledger further, pulled out a page showing the loan I covered 5 years ago when their venture tanked. This wasn't charity. It was expectation. And the name at the bottom was mine. I watched as children exchanged glances, adults stiffened, my voice soft but unwavering. Empowerment mixed with the sharp taste of betrayal. The room segmented. Some faces turned away, others stuck in place. The turning tide had begun. I closed the file. I stepped toward the door. I didn't return for pity. I returned for truth, I said. My father's voice lowered, you're making a mistake. This family will remember this Christmas as the one you broke it. A faint smile curved my lips. Maybe. But I'll remember the one where I rebuilt me. I picked up the file and walked out the front door into the silent snow-kissed morning. I closed it behind me, not as retreat, but as declaration. I recalled the key in my glove box, the anniversary snowfall, the names omitted, the house that wasn't mine any longer. I accepted that this was the moment of change. Inside, the house still hummed with Christmas chatter. I watched from the entryway, my breath misting in the cold air, as they looked for a pause. I retrieved the blue velvet chair I'd brought with me, recognized it as mine now. I sat and let the quiet wash over me. I typed a short message to Beckett. If they taught you silence, I'll teach you presence. The momentum had shifted. I was no longer a part of their plan, I had become my own. The past didn't just haunt me, I repurposed it. The foundation I'd laid would support me now. Under the tree, I noticed a single wrapped box with my name, very deliberate. I hadn't moved it yet. The tag, from someone who still remembers. I paused, watching the morning light catch the edges of the ribbon. For the first time, I wondered who inside the family would open it instead of me. I pressed send at 6 sharp. Snow was still falling in light, steady flakes, the kind that soften everything they touch. My phone screen glowed pale in the dim light of the living room. For a few seconds, there was nothing, then the notifications started rolling in. Group chat pings, extended family threads, local news alerts. I watched the ripples spread, one after another, until the house itself seemed to stir. Upstairs, Odessa's alarm went off. She stumbled into the hallway, phone in hand, scanning the attachments I'd sent. The letter, the original will draft, the family ledger. Her face drained of color. My mentor's voice came to mind. Don't just reveal the truth, let it be discovered. And that's what I'd done. I didn't shout it. I let them find it. Today, I stopped whispering. Today, I published. Within minutes, the family room became a storm. My father stormed in first, robe half-tied, voice already breaking. "You've ruined Christmas," he shouted. My mother followed behind, lips trembling but silent. Odessa slammed her phone on the coffee table. "You had no right to send that," she said. I held up the small apology card I'd found the night before, the one wrapped under the tree. "From someone who still remembers," I read aloud. If someone remembered, why was I left out all these years? My brother tried to take control. "Let's talk privately," he said through clenched teeth. I shook my head. "No. We talk now. We've hidden enough." The noise swelled, voices overlapping, accusations thrown, years of silence cracking open at once. Then came the video call tones, extended family joining through Zoom, already reading the story I'd sent. My cousin's face appeared on the screen, wide-eyed. "Well," she said flatly, "this isn't what I expected for Christmas." Vindication burned hot in my chest, tangled with unease. The truth was out, but peace was gone. I walked into the study and flipped the power on. The family followed, unsure if they were defending or chasing me. I connected my phone to the television, and the screen came alive with files, emails, bank transfers, all the evidence they thought I'd never piece together. I pointed to each one. "This is where the payments went. This is who signed. This," I tapped Odessa's name, "is when you replaced mine." Kelton muttered, "I never considered you part of the board." I looked him straight in the eye. "I paid for the board. I just wasn't invited to the meeting." The room fell into heavy silence. My father took one step forward, then stopped, as though realizing authority had shifted without his consent. My mother closed her eyes, almost relieved it was over. Then Beckett, quiet, gentle Beckett, spoke from the corner. "Aunt Marin, where were you supposed to sit?" he asked softly. I met his gaze. "At the table," I said. But someone decided I belonged in the basement. And for the first time, I saw doubt crack their certainty. The air felt different, less minefield, more reckoning. By mid-afternoon, the noise faded. People began to leave, some angry, some embarrassed, others wordless. The house felt both lighter and lonelier. I walked through the hall, the scent of pine and burnt candles mixing with cold air from the porch. I passed the dining table, empty plates, overturned glasses, and the chair I had reclaimed. The blue velvet one. I sat there, not to rest, but to reclaim stillness. The silence after exposure has a sound of its own. I thought of that line that had stayed with me for years: "You don't get to erase me and pretend I'm invisible." I typed a short message to Beckett. "You watched it. Now you decide where you belong." Then I stood, went back to the study, locked the door behind me, and let my breathing settle. Freedom didn't feel like celebration, it felt like air after drowning. A soft knock echoed from the front door. I opened it slowly. There, half hidden in the drifting snow, stood my mother's sister, an aunt I hadn't seen since the funeral. In her hands, a small box wrapped in gold paper. She smiled faintly. "Your mother asked me to give this to you in person," she said. I took it gently, unwrapped it, and found inside a single brass house key, my name engraved on the stem. I traced the letters with my thumb. It wasn't about the house anymore. It was about being seen. And for the first time, I felt the tide turning, not against them, but toward me.